You are now listening to an episode of the Hey Sis podcast. I am the host, Dr. D. Evans. Let's get into it. Hey, everyone, and thank you for listening to the Hey Sis podcast. I am your host, Dr. D. And in today's episode, we are going to be discussing how to have hard conversations. So think about a conversation you've been putting off with a friend, with the spouse, with a coworker, with the boss. Get it in your head. I'll give you a second. All right. There's like dozens of books on this topic, whether it's conflict resolution or inner healing and emotional development. But in the midst of all of these self-help books and any psychology books, what you'll find is at the end of the day, you have to understand that you as an individual have the power to say yes and no. You can choose to engage in a situation and you can choose to disengage. So never feel like you are stuck in a situation with anybody at any time that you cannot get out of. If you need to have a conversation with someone because you need to be free, because you feel trapped, I want to give this quick disclaimer. No one has ownership of you. Okay. So it's not an extreme case and it's just a conversation you need to have and it's difficult. You've been putting it off. You're like, listen, I'm worried if this other party will get angry with me. Or maybe you're worried that it will change the relationship. Can I assure you, having the conversation is worth it? Because you having this burden of carrying a weight of conflict, carrying the weight of offense, or carrying the weight of shame, whatever emotion that you're carrying that you have not articulated to a person that it involves, you don't need to carry that. That's all I'm trying to say. You don't need to carry it. And I'm just speaking, let me preface that as well. This is in cases of mutual relationships, like mutually beneficial relationships, platonic or romantic or work-based relationships. If you are stalking someone, having a conversation with why they won't engage with you because you want to stalk them, this is not the podcast episode for you. Okay? Nevertheless, so how to prepare for a difficult conversation. Before going into the conversation, I think that that's really your game plan. It's not so much the meat of the conversation that I believe is the priority. I think your mental awareness and spiritual awareness is important to having hard conversations because you need to know why you're having it. What's the purpose in having this conversation? Do you want this person to change? Are you articulating that you have changed? What's the outcome? What do you want to accomplish? What would be the ideal outcome? And as you have this conversation with yourself, invite the Holy Spirit. Make sure that you are clear about your purpose. And watch for the hidden purposes in between. Because you may think that you have honorable goals. Like, I want to have a hard conversation because I was just like them at that age. And I want them to know that they don't have to talk loud like that, right? You could genuinely believe that that's your real motive, only to notice that your language when you communicate is overly critical and condescending. So you think that you want to support, but really you're going to end up punishing. So make sure that when you enter into conversations, you are clear about your outcome. Because if you enter into a hard conversation with wrong motives, in the words of Kendrick Lamar, it may be the right time, but the wrong person. So I would always advise Even if you're coming into a conversation to punish someone or to bring something to light or to call out something, be clear about that. Be very open and be very honest with yourself about why you're having the conversation, especially with friends. If you are having a conversation that you know, ideal outcome, it's going to change the course of your friendship. Be clear about it within yourself or resolve it. That after I have this conversation, things are going to be weird. Resolve it within yourself. Because if you're not clear about that, it's going to wreck everything. And then ask yourself, am I really having this conversation because I love my friend, or am I just being mean? Am I just bringing up something that's annoying to me that I could just set a boundary around? And if you don't know what a boundary is, I've had quite a few podcast episodes about it. You should be able to, just look in the files there and sign up for Hazy's podcast. Sign up for the Hazy's Premium because I have a lot of examples there. Also, before you go into a difficult conversation, ask yourself, what assumptions are you making about another person's intentions? Because, ladies, depending on what week it is, honey, whether you're ovulating or not, you could really be making a harsh assumption about someone's intentions based on the way that our body is fluctuating. It could be based on a hormonal imbalance, okay? So you may feel intimidated or belittled or disrespected, but make sure that in your moment of feeling disrespected by someone, that you aren't so quick to assume another person's intention. Because at the end of the day, impact does not necessarily equal intent. Yeah, impact does not necessarily equal intent. There have been moments where I felt very disrespected by someone. And when I had the hard conversation, I learned that that not only was it not their intention, they were very unaware that I felt disrespected. It was a cultural issue. Okay. Now that we had the hard conversation, now we can be on the same page. I love you. I forgive you. Don't do that no more. That's why hard conversations are very, very important. So hold on one second here. I have a third thing I want to just go over with you when it comes to having a hard conversation. What buttons of yours are being pushed? Some of the hard conversations we want to have with people are really about ourselves and what we don't like and what we find to be, repulsive. Take a look at your own story. What personal history is being triggered? I had a friend that I noticed became very, I'm very annoying to me in with incessant questions. I mean, absolutely incessant. And I discerned something is just weird about these questions. But I automatically went with what's my trigger. And my trigger is I hate stupid questions. So I didn't say anything at first, but it just kept growing. And the timing of the questions, the tone of the questions, even the assumption of these questions, I was like, okay, something else is going on with her. And I decided to have a hard conversation. And that conversation, it was difficult now. But I gave myself time to prep for that conversation because I love that person and I want them to be well. But I also want to make it clear that, as y'all know, I say on here, I am not the cause and the cure for whatever you're going through in your life. So I don't want you to feel so free to put your baggage on me in the form of abuse. So that's what you're doing because you feel beat up. You want to beat up on someone. Listen, it's not going to be me. Find somebody else to play with. So I did have that conversation in a more professional tone, but I just addressed the fact that, hey, stop. Stop with the questions. Stop. It feels like you're like trying to heckle me a little bit, and I don't like it. Now, she didn't stop immediately. I'll just tell you the whole story. She didn't stop immediately, but I noticed that she started catching herself. And then through conversation, I realized she was going through some things, you know, family stuff. Okay. So to me, it made sense why my life was triggering her. And she was just triggered, period. I mean, I think everything was triggering her. And so guess what I did as a result of that hard conversation? I set a boundary because I can't change her life for her. I love you. But what I felt like is that she wasn't really sorry about how she was treating me and other people because she felt substantiated by her pain. And guess what? That's her experience. And I have to let her have that. But my role is to ensure that I don't want none of that contagious pain you got. So I'm going to set a boundary. I love you, but for right now, you're not whole. And I have an assignment from the Lord. And guess what my assignment is not? Babysitting your pain. So maybe we can reconvene at a different time. But right now, I hope you heal, and I pray you heal well. Okay. Now that was an example of me being able to ask myself, am I being triggered by my disdain for stupid questions, or is this really something that's off? But nevertheless, I still had the hard conversation because we had a relationship to where I could say that to her. Make sure when you have conversations that you are not just operating out of your feelings, and be prepared for the other person to call that out about you, right? Because if you're in a friendship, it's probably going to be mutual accountability, right? I've even had a situation to where someone put a boundary with me that, see, the problem is being discerning and prophetic. Like, I understood why they placed the boundary, but the boundary was based in disillusionment. But hey, that wasn't for me to explain to them because that's their walk. Okay, cool. But I said when we had that hard conversation, she placed a boundary with me about like what topics she wanted to discuss when we were conversing. And it surrounded a specific situation that involved some trauma and strife, right? And I adhered to the boundary. But I also made it clear, since you put this boundary up, so can I. Just be reminded. Because I knew that the boundary wasn't really about living a life you don't want to escape from. The boundary was about not owning the truth. So what I know about that, because the enemy loves deception, is that the truth always finds a way of seeking you out. And you can say, don't bring up this topic because you don't want to talk about it anymore. You're just done discussing it. But sooner or later, them demons are coming back. Okay? The cycle's going to repeat. And it definitely happened. And it happened through another situation that had to be repeatedly talked about with a third party. And y'all, this was a test of my own faith. See, I'll testify to this. Part of me wanted to retaliate because I felt like you placed this boundary and it was disillusion. That was just immature. You was just mad because you didn't want to deal with the situation. And now this woman was talking repeatedly about a situation, and maybe, I guess I can say it was triggering for me in some ways. But instead of being petty and saying, I don't want to talk about this, to set a boundary with you too. I allowed her to speak because I knew that her immaturity couldn't understand. I knew she was too immature to understand that her inability to see what was going on in the last situation directly affected why she was in her current situation. But I took one for the team in a sense that I realized this girl had a need. And so I just listened and I loved her in the place she was in and offered advice from that space. So what I'm saying is hard conversations may require you to extend a grace and compassion that you feel like is unfair. But that's also okay. As Christians, we should be okay with that, right? And again, you never know. God may be leading you to have a hard conversation with somebody that can lead to some real breakthrough for them. It could really be a ministry moment. So so just think about that. Also, before you have a hard conversation, reflect upon your attitude towards the conversation and reflect on if your attitudes towards the conversation or the person is affecting the way that you perceive it. So if you think that it's going to be a terrible conversation, it's like you're manifesting it. It's going to be terrible then. But if you pray and you're led by the Holy Spirit and you're like, listen, even though we might not see eye to eye, what I know is I'm going to come out of this conversation weightless, and then we'll have a firm foundation to stand on about where our friendship or where our relationship is going. And also ask yourself, have you contributed to the problem? How have you contributed to the conflict that you want to discuss? And can you own your part? So I was talking to this guy and talking, like not dating, talking. We didn't get to the dating stage. We were talking and I didn't like, he wasn't moving fast enough. Can I just put it like that? Baby boy was not moving fast enough, okay? And I'm like, you are really taking the long way around unnecessarily with me. And I need to figure out, are you trying to be zaddy or are you trying to be a situationship? I'm not here for situationship, okay? My eggs don't have situationship time, okay? I just don't have it. And his response was, I don't have basically enough mental capacity to give you what you want. And this was a hard conversation. So in return, I said, so what was the point of you even starting a situationship, a talking stage? What was the point of you initiating that with me to begin with? Because you want to be pen pals? And that's when I began to tell him, you were dishonest. You really didn't, you wasted my time. Hard conversation. And guess what? I contributed to it because he was cute. And I just really thought he just could not be that dumb. Okay, I didn't mean to say that, but I did mean to say it. Okay. Moving on. That's happened again to me, like in a dating or like talking situation. And I highly advocate for having difficult conversations when you're dating, so they won't turn into situationships. Like, I need to know where this is going. Are you dating to marry or are you dating to be a pen pal? Because I don't want you to ask me, how are you doing every day to get on my nerves? What you doing me to death? I'm not interested in that. It's not. Maybe other women are. It's not me. Okay. What are we doing? A minor. Okay. So, yeah, it happened again. I'm trying to figure out if I want to tell the story or not, but I am going to tell it. So, talking to this guy, we're friends, and then it kind of turns into, oh, I think he likes me or whatever. And then it turns into, oof. It turns into him having a monologue in my inbox because I did not respond. So he tried to initiate a difficult conversation with me, but I did not respond back because I feel like you're not going to get any more of my time that I wasted. But he wanted to initiate a conversation with me because he decided to be with someone. that wasn't your girl. Now listen, fly bird fly. If you want to be with whomever, bye. Okay. If you don't want me, then don't talk to me. Go ahead and free yourself. That's in the words of Prophetess Fantasia. The point was that text message came after me repeatedly trying to narrow down some dates when we were going to do just fun stuff. So I felt like, okay, so you was ignoring me. And I'm sure he was, because he's trying to build up strength to have this conversation. I get it, but I didn't like the way it was done. And I told y'all this, I'm going to tell you right now, I ghosted the piss out of him. We've talked about ghosting on the Haces Premium and the Haces Premium like platform. It's just, if you already have Haces Premium, please get it. I talked about ghosting in there. I ghosted the piss out of him because I felt like you knew what you were doing when you were kind of leading me on, and you couldn't keep up the charade because of whatever reason. I don't like it. So I did not dignify that with some long drawn out text message. I didn't feel like calling him and telling him off. No, your punishment, and I did say punishment because it's not a boundary. Your punishment is that you just don't have access to me. That's it. I'll be cordial when I see you, but I'm not gonna honor deception. So, thought I'd mention that. Maybe someone that's dating can take that. And if I gave you all the details to the situation, you would understand why I was not interested in having or responding to him, because it was very clear I was being led on. Listen, don't nobody have time. So I appreciate him attempting to initiate a difficult conversation. I was just unwilling to talk back because I felt like I had wasted enough time. Like, you've wasted quite a few months of my time. You don't get another minute. Read, received, bye. Because I didn't want to continue the friendship. I didn't see a path forward. Nevertheless, so as you're preparing to have a difficult conversation, just remember to pray before you have it, fast before you have it. Sometimes that helps, especially if you want to have a successful outcome. So basically, inquire the Lord of your own stuff. Go through a moment of discovery and curiosity with God. Acknowledge the spaces to where you felt unheard and misunderstood. All that is necessary. If you need to write out what you need to say, do it. I have went into meetings with bullet points in my notes app because you don't want to miss nothing. Come prepared. If you come in with shots fired, baby, let's go guns blazing. And then advocate for yourself, because they're going to be able to talk back. Hopefully, you're going to give them space to do that. Advocate for yourself with clear examples. And if it turns abusive in a screaming match, you got to go. And then once, things have kind of died down and everybody has said their opinion, see if there's room for problem solving. See if there's room for a solution. See if there's room for brainstorming. At the end of some of these difficult conversations, it really is the end. And that is also okay. But difficult conversations can also bridge the gap to move forward. That's my prayer for y'all. No, it's my prayer for us. So, I don't know if I would, if it's a situation where you need to start the conversation with a text message or an email, I don't like when people say, "Hey, we need to talk." This makes me feel so weird. So don't do that. Just, hey, give them a greeting. I have something I want to discuss with you. I think this will help us work together more effectively. Let me know when you're free. Or I need your help with something. Can we talk about blah, blah, blah soon? And then schedule a follow-up then. If it's a deep issue, like it's a hard issue, like romantic or platonic, just text a person before you have a conversation. Hey, I'd like to talk with you about some things I've noticed. for the past few months, and I have some observations I want to share with you. I have some observations that I've made and some conclusions I'm starting to draw. And so I really be interested in hearing your perspective. See how nice that was? Because you don't want to come off being accusatory in your initial, request to have a difficult conversation. So, nevertheless, I love y'all. Thank y'all for listening. And head over to theDEvans.com. Join the Hey Sis Premium. Okay? I think I'm going to carry this conversation over there as well because we got much to talk about. Anyway, see y'all soon. You have just finished an episode of the Hey Sis podcast. For more episodes, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for listening.